And I'll just tell you about this idea of forming a circle. You don't have to wait, you can just do it. And that's why it's called self-help groups. Because you can literally find 15 people here who you think, associated with what you said. And you can start something like a support group and start talking to each other. And start with like doing something small. And really it just becomes a tree. And I've seen this. And I'll tell you how our first self-help group in Delhi, Gloria came to visit there. And it was raining and they didn't know who Gloria was or what she's written or nothing. They were illiterate women living in a slum in Delhi, and it was raining that day, and I just told them that just someone who believes in women's rights is coming, and if you want to listen to her you can come, but no pressure. And the slums of Delhi are very squashed together, like all the houses are really close to each other, and there were these little lanes, and people had to stand on stairs and on roofs and that, and people showed up with their umbrellas. And then I was thinking, what is Gloria going to say to them? Here's this group of women living in a slum in Delhi, trafficked for labor and sexually exploited, and they're coming to listen to someone just to honor that there's someone fighting for women's rights across the world. And literally the idea that she said, honor your sister with the truth. I think that's how a self-help group gets formed, is when you start speaking to each other as truthfully as you can. So that's what Gloria did, and she spoke to them about abortion, and she said, she came to India many years ago, and she wanted an abortion, I think, and she wanted to do it, and that was her first trip and all of that. And the women totally connected with her, because in the lives they are leading out there, they've had to, face having to abort on secretly, not tell their mothers-in-law, their husbands, their fathers-in-law, and all of that, and how do they go about it. And they've struggled through the same thing. So just honoring the person in front of you with the truth and organizing in small groups, it really can help. So you can literally create a support group here, is what I would say.
Do you ever get to follow up on those children? Do they stay around? Are they, because I also remember a young girl, and I remember asking her when she had come there, and she said, "Oh, I was born here," and this was in off Falkland Road, and she said, "But I didn't have to start working till I was 7," and that was my introduction. But I remember the other children that you were taking care of, and I wondered if you had follow up on them.
We have some 814 children we know are in school and doing well, and but there are many others who've disappeared when their mothers disappeared, or we couldn't keep track of them. We couldn't take on the organized criminal networks and all of that. So we are trying to create more infrastructure. We are trying to strengthen the community outreach centers that we have with stronger legal support, so that we can get lawyers involved more actively with us. We are trying to create an infrastructure inside the community outreach centers for more staff, because we are very short-staffed all the time, and we have to sometimes just spend the whole day taking women to hospitals. Sometimes just organizing food, sometimes someone's committed suicide and organizing a funeral. So all of that now, we have the support of some foundations, including the Novo Foundation, and Jennifer is not here today, she's in Milwaukee, but she was a huge support, and she came all the way to Bihar, sat in a circle with the women and understood what they wanted, and even with the girls. So we are working at multiple levels, but I think safety is a very, very big issue, because you cannot access anything without safety. You cannot access the right to jobs, you cannot access the right to education, none of that, unless you are safe. And the women are being brutally beaten up, the girls are being groomed into prostitution, exactly as you said. And it's just impossible unless they are protected to be able to do this. So we are trying to create these infrastructures, but we just don't have enough people. And there is someone here, Claire, who was in Bihar and worked there for a... Yeah, hi. Do you want to talk about what you saw a little bit about the mother-daughter relationship? Because I know you did research on that. Yeah. She was an intern.
Ruchira threw me into Bihar at 19 years old, which was actually a pretty... What? Over here? Oh, okay. I'll stand next to So I showed up in Delhi as an intern for Off and Off, and I sat with Ruchira, and she says, I have a plan, I have a dream, I want this project, I don't have time for this project, will you do it? And I said, sure, without asking what it was. And it's like, well, I'm just going to put you on a 25-hour train to Bihar, and then you're going to have to take a 3-hour drive on a road. It's not really a road, but it's a road. And you'll live in my house. And this is the first time I've really left the United States. And of course I said, okay, all right. And my job was to document the stories of women in Bihar that have been intergenerationally trafficked, where you have...
Explain what is intergenerational.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm still
Still mentoring, teaching, yeah. So it's when grandmothers, mothers, daughters, all within one family are prostituted generation upon generation. And this has been a big part of the work that APNIAP has done in Bihar, is going into the red light district in Forbesganj, where this has happened just generation upon generation, predominantly among a tribe there that was forcibly settled and had no other work, and so it was forced into this not work, this slavery for the women there. And so I went with Tinku Didi and Kalam and all the people who are very, very famous because of Nicholas Kristof's wonderful book. And I talked with Mina and I talked with Fatima, and I was able to have the privilege to sit in a circle of women there. And I have to say the tenacity that Ruchira has is definitely contagious, because I was supposed to be there recording their stories, and after telling me these harrowing stories of generation upon generation of prostitution, someone comes in and they look up and go, your daughter wasn't in school. Why wasn't your daughter in school? And then we have to have an hour discussion about how to get the daughter back in school. And then eventually it would come back to my questions. But the tenacity and the hope there was incredible. And I think one quick story that has stayed with me ever since was most of the girls were my age or younger. And we quickly realized that when they were sitting there with their kids and their daughters who were kind of condemned to a certain future. And I always told them, as Ruchira had instructed me, always tell them, ask me questions. Because you're asking for their entire sexual history, let them ask you questions. And their first question was, where's your husband? Where are your children? Where did you come from? How did you get here? And they all figured it out. They would figure out how unfair it actually was. And that has stayed with me. So thank you,
So maybe one final question, and then we're gonna close. So did you have your hand up?
Yeah, it was not more a question. It was more maybe along the lines of a little bit of an answer for the circles and things like that. Just in the idea of people meeting people and places coming together and talking about safety and things like that. Probably one of the biggest things is getting stories out and getting people aware of the different situations that are not just in this country, but in India and in every single country. And just one group that I've done very little work with, but want to do more, is called World Pulse, which many of you might have heard of, which does try to bring together those circles and to get the different stories of the women in all the different situations, and not just the women, but the communities, into one place where people can have communication, and it's based on a journalistic idea of writing stories and sharing stories, and I think that's probably a good base to go from too.
So I'm going to give Gloria and Ruchira the last word.
Because I want to, leave us with.
Yeah.
I feel hopeful, and I don't want you not to feel. So I was thinking that when this wave of the women's movement started, we could have had a similar discussion about violence inside the home. It was kind of considered normal, or it was the fault of the woman who was getting beaten up, either because she married the wrong guy or because she'd done something that deserved it. I mean, the term domestic violence or laws against it, just didn't exist. Certainly not when I was growing up, and certainly not when I, became active. It just didn't exist. And in fact, the cops treated it as completely separate. So that the household, the home, the law stopped at the door. And now, sex outside the home is a similar bubble in which the law stops, and all rational idea of free will and actually the return of the idea that somehow the woman enjoys this, has invited it, wants it. You know, sex is like national interest. You know, all bets are off. The Constitution doesn't count. Nothing. Right. and I think that's changing. You know, that's really changing. We're beginning to understand that it isn't normal. It isn't inevitable. That actually body invasion is the most traumatic crime. I mean, getting beaten up is bad, but body invasion, and the letters I get that understand this the best come from men in prison, who've been raped in prison, and who really understand what that means. So that the fact that we understand it better inside the household and have done something means that we can understand it better inside this supposedly, hands-off, no-law area of sexuality, along with the positive element of eroticizing equality.
There is no last word to this because this is a lifelong struggle. But I think with every step that we are taking, we have achievements which are changing the inevitability of prostitution. And we don't have to accept prostitution wherever we are as being inevitable just because people are poor or people of color or people of a certain race or women. We don't have to accept anything on their behalf because they are now finding that they are not going to accept it. They are organizing in small self-help groups and they are resisting the injustice in their life. They want an economy in which, neither do they have to sell themselves and nor does anyone have to buy them. And they are talking about equality at the deepest level in small groups. What we can do is that we can also form groups and we can support them. Those groups are courageous, but you can be courageous too here in New York and form groups and support them. And that's all, they would appreciate it. You don't have to be there. And the problem is not so overwhelming. It can be tackled person by person, girl by girl, and woman by woman, and in groups. And so we can all rescue each other just as we are rescuing them. And we are rescuing each other. So the circle will just continue. And that's how change will happen. So that's the last word I have.
Thank you.